Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2024 Kawasaki Ninja E-1. Now we've already reviewed the Z E-1, which is basically the same as this, but of course this one has Ninja styling. So what I'm going to do with this one is we're going to talk about a lot of the unique features in Kawasaki's new fully electric motorcycle. Now again, I understand not everybody's into electrics, and that's fine, and I want to be very clear. I'm on the record as saying that this bike and the Z E-1 are not mainstream bikes. They're not the bike that I was hoping for, but this is a good first look at what Kawasaki is doing with their electric bikes. For most people, this isn't going to have enough range for everyday use. It's not going to have enough speed for everyday use. But again, we can see where Kawasaki's going with a bike like this. And what I'm going to do is take a look at all the features in this that make it unique. We're going to give you sort of an inside look. We're going to take a look at the batteries. We're going to show you some of the modes, walk mode. It actually has reverse as well. And all of that is going to be done in this video to give you an example of what this bike is all about. And maybe one day down the road, what a bike like made for more the mainstream would be all about. So I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. And like I said, they've already sold the Z E-1. They have the Ninja E-1 here. So if you want it, make sure you use the link in the description, reach out to them because these things do go quick. There aren't a whole lot of them. And again, this is more for that early adopter type person, someone who maybe wants a collectible, something that you can drive around town or something that you can keep for a long time and sort of look at Kawasaki's first step into the electric world. So make sure you reach out to them, and if you have questions, make sure you let me know in the comments below because I can come back to this bike again and again as long as it's still here, and we'll keep going on and making more videos to answer your questions. Let's get going with this review. So normally at this part of the video, I take the bike and I kind of just put it in its class and kind of explain sort of how I take a look at it and what class I place it in, and you may place it in different classes. But before we do that, let's just be clear about some of my background. First of all, I've done vehicle videos long before this YouTube channel came out. I have a lot of EV experience, and I'm on the record for years now, over a decade, talking about EVs, saying that EVs are for some people, they're not for other people. I happen to drive a couple EVs. I even have an EV dirt bike. So I've got some experience in the class, but again, I'm in no way forcing you to have an EV if it's not ready for you. And like I said, for most people, this isn't going to be enough. And we'll talk about why some of those things, it's maybe not enough to replace your regular motorcycle. We'll talk about some of the reasons why in this video. But overall, one thing I have with experience driving an EV road bike, which was the Zero SR, whatever it's called, this street bike from Zero, is I found that bike had great acceleration, but very poor handling. And at the time, I was going back and forth between that Zero and my Kawasaki Versys. That's the bike I happened to have at the time. And going back and forth between those two bikes, the Zero, again, very good acceleration, no shifting, that kind of stuff is kind of cool, but it didn't handle very well. And every time I went back to my Versys, it just had a much better handling feeling than the Zero that I drove back in 2019 was probably the last time I drove that one, or the first time I drove that one, I should say. So this bike, for me, one of the cool things about it is Kawasaki knows how to design a bike that handles well, and that's part of the fun with this bike. Everything about it, you can tell, even from looking at it, is designed to handle well. And that's one of the exciting pieces of this, is it's going to be a fun to drive small vehicle, but it does have some limited use. So let's take a look at some of the things that make it unique as an electric motorcycle and talk about some of the alternatives just to give you an idea of what's going on here and what might go on in the future with Kawasaki's electric vehicles. So let's start by taking a look at the front wheel of this bike. And the front wheel is sort of where I start on a lot of bikes because it gives you a perspective of what the bike is sort of designed for and what the manufacturer's intent for this bike is. And you have a couple interesting things here. So first of all, you've got the full disc brake. It's all motorcycle quality, lightweight wheels as well. The biggest difference you're going to see compared to other motorcycles is the front wheel is fairly small in the width department. Now that's 100 millimeters wide instead of 120 would be a super bike, 110 would be the Ninja 500, which is the similar size to this bike. But again, this bike is different. So what that does is a few things. A little bit narrower wheel. Generally, you see narrow wheels on a lot of EVs in general, just for a little bit better mileage, a little bit less wind resistance, road resistance, whatever it is. But the bigger thing you're going to find on this bike is a narrow wheel will allow you to go side to side very quickly. So it's going to be quite flickable as a bike, going side to side, because not just is the front wheel a little bit narrower, but the rear wheel is a little bit narrower as well. So that's the big thing you're going to find just taking a look at the front wheel overall. Another thing you're going to find here with the Ninja EV. We'll just scroll up just a little tiny bit. You can see that Ninja name. You do have full LED lighting, including, just like the rest of the Ninjas, you have the signal light built into the bodywork here. So on the Z, you saw it sticking out on a stock. Here it's built in the bodywork, just like some of the other Ninjas in the lineup. So kind of a cool thing. Let's look at one more EV specific thing before we really dive into the real specifics. So taking a look at the Ninja compared to the Z, the EV of both of them, the Z, you could see the battery pack. It was a box kind of buried in here. I can still see it through the wide opening holes here, but the Ninja gives you a lot of perceived width here. So again, it gives you that more sport bike styling. It's going to give you a little bit of wind protection, weather protection, but a lot of it's just styling. So it's quite hollow here to go from here to the battery, but the battery is in here. So motor down there, battery in here, and it's actually two batteries. We'll talk about that in a second here. On the Ninja, you can't see it because you have that classic bodywork. And of course, being an EV, it doesn't have an exhaust. So no exhaust, no weight down here, anything like that, and no exhaust out the side. So again, that all leads to something that is very, very light. And a lot of people are surprised to find out exactly how light this bike is, because it is just 309 pounds with the battery in. So that would be like a wet weight. So ready to go, 309 pounds. That is significantly lighter than any other road-going motorcycle from Kawasaki. And a lot of time you hear about in the car world, EVs are significantly heavier. In this case, this EV is significantly lighter than anything else Kawasaki sells. So one of the unique things about an electric motorcycle is, in theory, they could style this very, very different. In fact, this here, although it looks like a fuel tank and it's familiar when you're riding, I'll show you me sitting on this in a second, in a couple minutes here to show you what it looks like, but you don't actually need this section here because it doesn't have a fuel tank, so therefore it doesn't need this space. What you have instead is a storage space in here that you can use that is lockable, and below that you have the battery packs here. There's two of them there. We're going to talk about these in just a second. But first I'm going to show you sitting on the bike just so you have a general idea of the seating position here, because it is a motorcycle and not a scooter or something like that. And then we'll talk about these batteries and how they work. So a lot of people, when they hear about the lightweight of this bike, they think it's a very, very small motorcycle, but you can see here, it is a compact motorcycle. It's similar in size to the Ninja 500. It's not the exact same. A lot of people think that it's the exact same feel as a Ninja 500. It is a little bit different than that. But you can see here, I'm about 6 feet tall, so fairly tall individual. Seat height is low, so no real issue if you're shorter than me to fit on this. But you can see even at 6 feet, fully comfortable here. And again, the tank gives you that familiar feeling. It very much feels like a sport bike, and it puts you in position with a slight lean here to be in a position to easily handle this bike back and forth. And again, because it's so light, it's very, very good. Now, one of the cool things about this bike, we'll show you in a second in the dash, is it does have a walk mode. And the walk mode is kind of interesting. I'm going to turn the bike on here. We're going to switch to the walk mode. Let me just hold that down for a second. So now in walk mode, I can roll the throttle backwards and it'll go 3 kilometers an hour backwards like this. And I can roll the throttle forward and it'll go 5 kilometers an hour forward. So you can see I did it quite a bit. I'll go backwards again. Watch my wrist if you can. Hopefully I'm still in the shot. Yeah, we'll go back a little further. My watch is my viewfinder. I'm going to give it full throttle in walk mode here. Nice and easy, 5 kilometers an hour. So because it has an electric motor, one of the unique things about this bike is it can just reverse the polarity, run that motor backwards, and walk you backwards. Now, they do recommend in walk mode, whether you're going forward or reverse, to stand across the bike. And if you think about that for a reason, if your hand slips for a second and you're not standing across the bike, you will send the bike off on its own, and that can be, you know, it's like the bike is in gear essentially. So there is no real true neutral when you're in that walk mode. You touch that throttle, you're going forward, touch it backwards, you're going backwards. So it's kind of a cool thing to help move it around. Again, it's not a heavy bike to move around, but as you look at Kawasaki's, you know, entrance into electric vehicles, these are features that they will include in their more mainstream bikes as well. And it kind of makes some sense, and it's kind of cool. And again, complete silence. So kind of a cool mode there. There it is with me on it. Typical Ninja stuff as well. So if you wanted to go into a full tuck position for aerodynamics or something like that, you do have the mirrors in front of you still, where on the Z model, they're more on the handlebars, which is a little closer to you. We'll look at all the dash and some of the modes here in a second, but first, let's take a look at the battery. So I mentioned that the battery is in here. Now there's something unique about this. If you get a Kawasaki accessory, you can sort of plug it in behind the seat here, and you can charge both batteries on the bike. You just have a little attachment that comes in through here. So you do have both batteries on the bike. can be charged. Now, if you take them out, you have a charger that comes with the bike. Again, this little attachment that allows you to charge on the bike is an aftermarket Kawasaki accessory. If you buy this bike, I encourage you to get that because being able to charge them both on the bike is just convenient. It makes sense. To me, they should probably include that, but again, it's up to them and what they do. So having the batteries on the bike is sort of the typical thing, and I think as you get to bigger and bigger batteries, you won't have removable batteries. But now that this one is a smaller battery, they do allow removable batteries. So first of all, use your key there to open up this, use the latch here to open up this handle. Now I'm gonna take this out just for the video purposes. You could leave it in, you could flip it up and that kind of thing, but I just don't wanna knock anything here. So we're gonna take that panel out that covers the batteries. I can show you in a second when we push the batteries back in that you can check them for charge, but to lift it out, one in one hand, the other in the other hand, and there the batteries have been removed. So here I am, both batteries. They're not the lightest things. I think they're about 25 pounds per, and that's why it's nice to have two of them, but if you wanted to charge them inside, you could do that. If you want to take them out of there, you can do that as well. What's interesting is there's still a 12-volt battery in there, so the dash will still come alive without these, which is very similar to electric cars, but this is what you have for your battery. Now, how they connect is also interesting, so I'm gonna pull you in a little bit closer and show you how they connect. So this is the open hole that's created when these batteries are missing. Now, the cool thing about these batteries is you can see the connectors on the bottom, right, sort of down there and there. Let me just drop these in. First of all, whoops, there we go. Drop that open again. I got the camera in my way here, so I'm knocking things down here, but there we go. If you see if I drop this in, they can be dropped in either way. So it doesn't matter this way or that way, they can be dropped in. They press in and they're fine. So we got one in there already. We'll take the second one, drop that in here as well. Again, I'm working on an awkward angle to try to make sure I give you the best angle. And you can see there is a little display down here. So let's just zoom into that for a second. You can see it's listed at about 100%. So you can touch that, whether it's on the bike or off the bike, and see that the exact battery percentage. So they're both at 100%, and we'll zoom out a little bit. You can see them sort of both there. But what's cool about these is a lot of motorcycles that do have disconnecting batteries in the electric bike space, they have kind of finicky connectors that you have to kind of play with and stuff. These can be dropped in like they are. They can be dropped in 180 degrees from what they are. As long as they're dropped in, they're basically plugged in and you're good to go. So again, we'll take this cover that I threw on the ground. We'll put that in here like this, hooks onto a little hinge if I line it up correctly, and then you close that like that. Then you've got back to the storage compartment, and then this is not a slam latch. You keep it key turned, turn the key like that, and you pull it out. It has a little rubber flap that goes over the key lock there, and we'll zoom back out again. And that's how everything's in there. So kind of an interesting way. You can charge them on the bike, you can charge them off the bike, but if you decide to charge them on the bike, you do need that Kawasaki accessory to allow you to charge them. The benefit of that is that they charge both together, so remember that. Once you pull them out of the bike, you have to manually charge one, disconnect it yourself, manually charge the other. So if you can charge them on the bike, that to me makes the most sense for most people, but you've got the flexibility. Let's take a look at the dash now. So using the same key that I used over here for the tank or the battery area, you can put that in the ignition, so it's all a one key system. And you can see on the Ninja here, you have a lot of body work kind of around there. Again, the Z is a little bit different that way, but the technology is all the same. Let's zoom all the way into, oops, excuse me, there we go. Zoom all the way into your TFT display here. There is a little bit of glare on there. The TFT displays are pretty good in real life for being very, very visible, but when you film them, they're not always perfect. So one of the things that you have to do here is you have to raise the kickstand to put it in any of the drive modes. So for instance, the walk mode has more of a beige screen. I can show you that in just a second here. We'll have to just readjust the camera. But when you start it up like it is, the throttle is dead. You can see it's in neutral. So neutral doesn't have gear shift, but neutral basically is showing you, hey, if you touch the throttle, it's not going anywhere. Now you do have to hit the start button. If you can hold down that start button on the right side, just like you would a starter, like a start button on a regular motorcycle, the bike will go into a drive mode, but it's not going to do that right now simply because the kickstand is down. What you can see here is a temperature gauge for the battery, so it's a comfortable mid-range temperature right there. Left side battery, right side battery, so again, you can drive this with batteries at a different state of charge, but you can always see that battery gauge on either side. And then there's some information down low, which we can cycle through here. You've got your average kilometer per kilowatt hour or per watt hour, your range in kilometers, you've got your sort of instant, so instant and average fuel efficiency right there. And then on this side button here, you've got trip A, trip B, and the odometer down at the bottom. So some information down there. Let's take the bike off the kickstand now and show you a couple of the other features in the dash. All right, so I've got the bike next to the tripod here. I may get a little bit wobbly with the bike here. I'll do my best to hold it steady. So now I can hit that start button because the kickstand is up. And we're gonna see a few things. So I gotta hold down that start button for a second, and you can see the drive mode come to life. So you've got D there for drive. Right now I'm in the road mode. I can switch that mode to an eco mode. We're gonna talk about what these modes mean in a second as far as range and speed, but there's also an E-boost button. We'll show you that button in a second. This E-boost allows you for a few seconds of extra power and extra speed, and you can tell how much because this bar graph will go down. So when you run out of that extra time, extra speed, that bar graph will decrease and you'll know that you haven't got used to that E-boost. So again, that is a limited for a few seconds full speed. We'll talk about that in a second. So eco mode and road mode are your only two options there, but there is a walk mode. Once you switch to walk mode, the entire dash changes color. Hopefully it shows up there. Yeah, it's a little bit sort of brownish, orangish, whatever. So walk mode says F and R. Again, that depends on how I roll the throttle. If I roll the throttle sort of like a regular motorcycle, it's going to go forward. If I roll it just a little bit back, it can allow it to go back, and it goes in reverse. And then of course, if you switch the mode again, if you do anything like put the kickstand down, which I'll do right now without hitting my tripod, hopefully. Oh, I'm gonna hit my tripod. Nope, I don't. There we go, I'm gonna lean it away. Oh, I'm gonna hit my tripod. There we go. Kickstand down, it's instantly in neutral there, and there's other ways to turn the bike off as well. So let's take a look at some of the controls now, and then we'll talk about some of these modes and how they work and how they're uniquely programmed for Kawasaki. So the left side handlebar is very typical Kawasaki stuff, except there's no clutch lever here at all. There is a little trigger button here which can flash your high beam. That's very typical on most Kawasaki, certainly all the Ninja lineup. It'll have a little flash to pass there. You have high beam and low beam. You have a signal light switch right there, all typical motorcycle stuff. Horn button there, and then you have a mode button. Press it forward and hold it for walk, otherwise just cycle through for the mode button for the road and the eco mode. So typical type controls there, just a little drive mode button, and again, you see that walk mode button there. Other side is where there's something a little different than you would have on a typical motorcycle as well. Let's just show you that. So over here on the throttle side, they don't recycle parts. The only other start switch and kill switch built in together is usually gray on things like the H2 that we reviewed the other day, the Versys 1000, what else do we have? The Ninja 1000 SX has a sort of single piece button. There's other bikes in the lineup that have a similar piece, but this one's a red one. The start button there, kill switch there. So again, pretty typical stuff for a motorcycle, pretty familiar stuff. This is that E-boost button. So just, you don't have to hold it, but just touching it once unlocks those few seconds of extra speed, and that's how you do that. Let's talk about speed and range now with this bike. So range and speed for me is the piece that makes this bike not what I had hoped it would be. And again, for many parts of the world, this is perfectly fine. But for North America, I think we were all hoping for that Ninja 400, Ninja 500 electric version, and that will probably be a future version with some of the same technology that's in this. But let's talk range and speed so we're fully transparent about what this bike has. First of all, in road mode, this will go 88 kilometers an hour. I'm going to speak in kilometers an hour because it's a Canadian bike and I'm a Canadian filming in Canada, Canada's #1 dealer. So 88 kilometers an hour in road mode. It will slow down to a top speed of 64 kilometers an hour in the eco mode. Now, one thing worth noting is that about 30% battery, you won't have full access to road mode. So it will cut your speed back to try to make sure it gets you home. But so while it will give you extra range at slower speeds, it is something worth remembering. So road mode 88 and eco mode 64. Now, if you are in road mode and hit that eco or that E-boost button, that E-boost button is going to give you a few seconds of max power. So in road mode, hitting that E-boost button, you're going to go up to 105 kilometers an hour as a top speed and watch that gauge drop. Once that gauge falls out of, once that gauge drops on that E-boost gauge that we showed you earlier, then that's it for your E-boost for a while. And then, so 188 can go to 105 in road mode. But 64 top speed in eco mode, you can still use that boost button and that will bring you to 75. So again, you could just switch drive modes and go up from 64 to 88 by going from eco to road. But if you use the boost button, the E-boost button, without switching drive modes, 64 to 75. So just make it super clear, 88 with the E-boost goes 105. 64 in eco with the E-boost to go 75. Those aren't great speeds for typical motorcyclists, and that's part of why this is going to be for early adopters or someone who's on something like a scooter with way better handling and really cool styling. Now, range is the other thing that is not up to snuff for some people's riding behaviors. And again, this is a rated range from Kawasaki of 67 kilometers. So it's just worth noting that if you have a super long commute, you may have to be charging these at the office. This is sort of a fun little around town kind of bike, the way it's equipped. And again, for many parts of the world, that's enough range, that's enough speed. In North America, this isn't going to be a mainstream bike, but there's the facts for you so that you have them, so you're aware of them before you buy this bike. So let's talk about if this bike is right for you. Now, first of all, I did a completely different view of the Z E-1. So if you're looking for a little bit more information on this bike, it's the same mechanical bike as this. It's just a little different styling. And again, there's some more information there. As I mentioned, this is not the bike that I was hoping for, and I think that's okay. I think what we're looking at here is not so much range and speed, but technologies. An interesting bike that Kawasaki is working on that they've also introduced that will be on this channel is the new hybrid bike, which combines some of these technologies with a gasoline engine from the Ninja 500, and it gives you super bike-like acceleration, it gives you 250cc-like fuel efficiency, and it will be able to drive in pure electric mode at certain speeds, which is kind of interesting as well. That bike is actually, to me, very competitively priced with, for instance, the bike that I bought, the Z900 RS SE. So it should have similar or even better acceleration, it's going to have far better fuel efficiency, and it's going to be similar price to that. And that's kind of a mainstream bike where Kawasaki's taking their electric sort of technology, and that bike to me will be far more mainstream than this one, especially here in North America. So stay tuned to this channel for that. And again, they'll have one here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. As I mentioned, the Z E-1 has already been sold that we did a video on before. This one here is going to probably sell soon. There's some interest in these, again, in the people that are looking at this. Again, those early adopters that want to get into a bike like this. So if you want to check out this bike, make sure you swing by them. And again, if you have questions, let me know in the comments before this one sells. I'll make sure I come back to them again and again. Thanks everybody for watching.